Yes. Let me start with Josue. Go ahead, and then I will go with Professor Frederick.
Yeah, thank you, Valer, for giving me the floor. I have a question concerning the CBDCs and the CIC. My question is for Professor Fred Wiggins. You talk about the central bank digital currency, but following our context here in Sub-Saharan Africa, with low acceptance of ICTs and low digitalization, mainly in rural areas. I wanted to know how can this CBDC can be included with the community of inclusive currency, which is something that is gradually taking places in rural Africa. For example, in Kenya, you can see some of the rural areas there in Kenya adopting the community inclusive currency to help families, to help disadvantaged communities to have access to digital tools to exchange goods and services through blockchain technology and all the stuff around that. The same projects being implemented even here in Cameroon in the West regions, where some of the NGOs are working with grassroots economics to implement this community inclusive currency. So my question was to know how can this CBDC can be implemented in the global South generally, following its own context and its own realities. Thank you.
Okay.
So Valer, I just wanted to mention that the chat is disabled according to my screen. So.
Oh, okay. Let me check that. Thank you.
So really good question, and I don't know that I have an answer for you. When I talked with Professor Samuel about this, the idea was that I would be speaking on what's going on in the United States as well as kind of a big global context. I'm not prepared to talk about details of what's going on in Central Africa regarding digital currencies. I'd be very interested in learning more. Clearly, digital divide will be a big issue. It's a concern in many parts of the world. Certainly, even in the United States, there are places where there's concern of how will digital currency be able to be adopted by certain parts of the population. I know that in many parts of the world, smartphones, flip phones are much more diffused into the population than even places like the United States. So all these digital divide issues will be a major factor, and this is going to take 5, 8, 10 years for sure.
Thank you, Fred. And maybe just adding that, we will forward your question to Mr. Mbozo, who is a specialist in that area. And if there's any answer, we'll find a way to forward that answer to you. The next name I have here is Caleb. Do you want to go ahead, Caleb, with your question, please?
Okay. I was trying to type, but then it seems I'm disabled. I'm unable to type. Okay. So I have basically two questions. The first one goes to Fred, and it's about blockchain. So I wish to ask, what is the prospect of blockchain? What is the prospect of blockchain in areas with infrastructure problems, more like the digital divide in Africa? I believe recently a trending issue in Africa has to be the issue of supply chain finance. And then it's mostly mentioned that blockchain will be a prospect for supply chain finance. But then a major issue in Africa also has to do with the digital divide. So what is the prospect of blockchain in Africa, which has a major issue of digital divide? That is the first question. And the second question also has to do with more or less mentorship for junior scholars, because I realized Prof. Antoine mentioned that Africa has low representation when it comes to research. And I believe from my end, one can also be attributed to mentorship, because when I check online and I see first in the top journals, then you can see a link between two. For instance, junior scholars in the West countries, you can see they are publishing a lot because they have mentorship, and that is clearly shown in the authorship. So is there happening for mentorship for this chapter? Thank you.
Well, I will answer the first question as best I can. Thank you, Caleb. Very good question. Again, This also pertains to digital divide issues, and you're asking what are the prospects for a technology like blockchain to be adopted in a place like Cameroon? I believe that's your question. In my graduate class, I teach a case. I teach a Harvard case on Maersk trying to implement a blockchain solution for global logistics and trade. And one of the big questions is, how do we get different parts of the world, different trade organizations, different governments to adopt this technology? And it was a major challenge, certainly. And so that's one of the main points of that case. Now then, as we talk about this case in my class, we learned that China has a similar trade logistics blockchain solution that, because of their size, they were able to implement and be adopted much quicker. So your question is very relevant. How do we promote adoption of such technologies in different parts of the world? And again, it's a digital divide question. Good research question, for sure.
Thank you, Fred. The next question, the next person we have in line here is Amy Nutsa.
So I believe Caleb had a second question about junior membership and.
Oh, I'm sorry if I missed that. I think for membership, I will let maybe Dr. Harfouch or Professor Samuel answer that for membership.
Okay, I think it was about mentorship. Okay, so if I'm to repeat, I was asking the possibility of having the senior scholars like Prof. Wamba and the rest being able to mentor the junior scholars as a way of more or less having more publications from our end in Africa.
Okay, I think Dr. Harfouch will answer your question.
Sorry, I didn't get the full question. Can he repeat it quickly?
Okay. Prof. So I said this in response to one of your comments during your presentation, and you mentioned that when you check the AIS and even the top journals, Africa has a lower representation.
Yes.
And from my end, I'm thinking we can also link that to mentorship, because when you check the top journals, you can see some of the junior scholars over there are paired with senior scholars in the Western countries. Over here, I see a limitation of that. So is there a possibility to have mentorship through this AIS where senior scholars now part of the world who have rich understanding of our context and mentor junior scholars to have papers in the top journals?
Yes, thank you very much for your question. Yeah, this is exactly why we are creating this chapter, and thank you for making it clear. The idea is to create capabilities. We're creating an association because we want to work not only on the individual, but also on the group level. So the idea is to bring and to put you in contact with big names, famous names, people who have succeeded. For example, Professor Wamba has more than 10,000 citation already, more than 10,000 citation. So we have people from Africa who have already succeeded, and of course, many other people. I'm sorry, I gave the example of the president because he's the president. So it was easy to take the example of Professor Wamba for me. So the idea of creating an association is to put young researchers who want to change and who want to work hard, and they want to create capabilities with these famous names. They have knowledge, they have papers, they know how to help you. And the association will be like the place where we can exchange, where we can present our ideas, and people can like it, so they can be interested in helping us, in pushing our papers into special issues, and later, once we are good in research, we can publish alone, and we became like someone who can help the association to pay back to the community. Is my answer clear or not really?
Thank you. I think it's very clear. Yeah.
Thank you.
Valère, je pense qu'on ne t'entend pas.
Ah oui, désolé. Désolé. Bah, écoutez, mute. That's Conference 101. I always head into that. I always forget to unmute myself. Yes, the next question we have, the next hand I have raised here, I see raised here is Aimé. So, Aimé, vas-y, tu peux poser ta question. Are you ready, Aimé? Okay, maybe Aimé is having issues. We'll go with Josue. Go ahead, Josue, with your question, please.
Thank you, Valère. My question goes to Professor Katina. I want to know, following your presentations, we've realized how girls and women can digital transformations, these digital trends that go in here and there. In Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa, mainly in rural areas where we have this kind of reluctant behaviors concerning technology. How can we as IS scholars can entertain and help in reducing these barriers of technology so that people in rural areas, mainly girls and women, should have access to technology, digital tools, and yeah, so that these digital trends should take its real form as we wish. Thank you.
For that question. Forgive me, I'm on a separate Zoom call in the States at the moment, but I think I caught your question. It's a beautiful question, especially as we develop through time in rural areas where there isn't access to mobile platforms. One of the GSMA documents that came out looked at the adoption, for example, in Cameroon or other places in Central Africa, of just mobile telephony and the dispersion and diffusion of feature phone handsets, right? Because there is no affordability en masse for smartphones, and even the network coverage. Forgive me, I'm just looking at statistics. I've never been to Cameroon, for example, in Central Africa, but I'm looking at the statistics of even the people that do have network coverage, and even if they can afford to have technology, what is their usage like? And where is the impetus for the importance of the smartphone, for example, to do trade or to communicate? Even adoption of social media for entrepreneurship or anything is low, like 5% of the population who have smartphones. You can find these figures on the GSMA website that was published in 2019. But I think you're referring here to a culture of change, and change takes time. What if I said to you, maybe the necessity of smartphones in rural areas differed based on context? I'm not saying to you that we need to have pervasive network coverage, although what we do know is there's a link between information transfer, income, and getting ourselves out of a poverty cycle and more towards literacy. I'm not even going to make the claim that smartphones would make a population more literate. In many cases, our children are becoming more illiterate by the adoption of smartphones. I know that sounds crazy. They can touch type and their reading is at an okay level, but they're not advanced in some ways. I was in the island of Anguilla. My husband visited before 2015, and then after the country in the Caribbean was Wi-Fi'd. And children used to play on the streets. And then when I visited, children were literally stuck on their tablets because of this Wi-Fi everywhere. So IS as an enabler depends on a nuanced approach. What are you enabling with the IS, with the smartphones, with the networks, with the internet? What are the positive values? So I want to go back to the social development. If that is strong, then the adoption of any new technology will be as strong, if not stronger. But in terms of educating the population, the first thing is access. And in rural areas, access is not there at the moment. And we can say that, okay, external nation states will come in and privatize everything. They will give us access. They will build our networks. but I really would like it to work from a perspective of grassroots in the local country, somehow to co-design, to engage with people, the professionals in country, to develop the capability to deploy networks, to deploy 2G and 3G wherever it's required, hopefully everywhere. But it is a culture of change. If the culture does not think technology is important to its future, then you can introduce anything you like. It won't be adopted in the right spirit, perhaps. So the first thing is safety. I know this sounds crazy, but if there is no conflict, then things can start to happen. Educational frameworks and policies towards getting everyone literate. And then the other thing is the adoption of tools that will enable us to get to the next stage. And if we go back to the stages I mentioned by the philosophers, well, what stage are you at? What is the vision for different countries in Central Africa? How do we want to adopt? But the role of women is critical. The mothers are the ones who are there in the home, particularly in these countries, that need to talk about the importance of education to get out of a poverty cycle, or to get out and to do something and to apply. And we have some great examples on the call today. I don't want to take up too much time because I feel like I've been inadequate in answering your incredible question, but look at the women on the line who are locals. They're very inspiring to me. I think we should be asking them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you as well, Dr. Katina. And I would say,
Katina, in your country.
Et Valère, on a également des questions dans la salle, si on peut en prendre.
OK, prenons-en quelques-unes pour maximum 5 minutes si tu veux. And then on va passer au mot de la fin du professeur Wamba. Vas-y, tu peux passer.
Participants d'aller droit au but avec leurs questions.
Okay, thank you very much. For those who don't know me, I'm William Otto. I'm a graduate student at the Catholic University of Central Africa. Actually, I have two questions. The first one goes to Professor Samuel Omba. During the seminars, we talked a great deal about how universities do not provide this kind of support for students in the event of writing the journal papers. Is it going to change with the creation of the CACAIS, mainly for those universities who cannot afford subscribing to an institutional membership on the IS model? So that's the first question. The second question goes to Professor Riggins. I would like to know if it's relevant to talk about digital currency in a context where banks are still operating on traditional banking. So that two questions.
Okay. Do we want to take another question and then we give the floor to Professor Riggins, or? Yeah. I'm asking just in case we have many questions that are, you know, kind of similar, we can answer them at once. Otherwise, Professor Riggins, you have the floor.
So I didn't quite, is it relevant to talk about digital currency in the context of what?
Where banks is operating on traditional banking.
Yeah, again, I don't know that I can talk about your specific context, although what we're seeing in China is quick adoption of digital currencies once it became available, rapid elimination of physical currency, and commerce being conducted on mobile phones. So the projects they've been working on over the last really 3-4 years, and again, the context of the government, authoritarian and so on, I don't know, but the adoption rate has been extremely fast, and people see value in this and quickly adopt once it becomes available.
So regarding my own question, I think that this new chapter is actually going to foster the access to resources. Because as a chapter, we are going to try to facilitate your registration. And you know that when you have your registration, you have access to all the archive data, that means journal article, conference article, that we can share now. Then you can have now what we call the discussion sessions. That means we need to empower people here who will organize sessions where you can go and share your own knowledge. You know, how do you actually write the conference paper? How do you write the journal paper? How do you attend the conference paper? So we need to empower you to do these kind of things. So the young should learn from all our people and from professional and professor. That's the objective. And not only we will facilitate the access, but we also want to create our own conference. That means in the short run, we need to have our own conference. That means we'll go across universities to say, guys, if you have paper, you know, every 2 years, I don't know yet, you can come and present. So we engage with the community now. They know that, okay, I have to plan 2 years ahead to write a good paper and publish in that conference. And then that means we need to meet again, discuss, share knowledge. I think that's the only way we can go through in order to engage with the international community. Because if you know now, we have less than 2% of publications from journals. And then if you look at the population, the African population is about 17% of the overall world population. They will only have 2% of journal.
Samuel, can I add something? Samuel, can I add something to that? So
Yes,
I gave,
of course.
so the topic I gave was meant to be an example of IT impacting society. And there's two things going on here. People are interested in my talk because of the relevance of the topic. And then we're talking about the chapter. What you're talking about is we need a conference where we can have these sorts of presentations and then have this dialogue about what are the research issues, how would we approach them, and so on, and then begin real research on such topics.
True.
Okay.
And that's what I was thinking about. When we're also engaging with professionals, so that means, for example, imagine you are spending 3 weeks, 2 months in a compound to help them solve their specific issues in their context, as Aurel was saying in the beginning. So that means you are not only learning from books, but you're also applying in a specific. You see, that's how we need to start. And I think I have a lot of hope about the chapter. So,
thank you, Professor Wamba. What I would like to, I still have 2 hands up there. I saw Aimee and Declare. I will suggest and I will ask you to forward your questions to Brain Booster. Aurel certainly has left the email address online. Send your questions there. Even those who had something in mind which they didn't say today, please submit your questions there. We will make sure that you get an answer by email as soon as we are able. Okay, we just have to move forward, unfortunately, with our schedule, and I will give the floor back to Professor Wamba for the closing statement of this conference.
So thank you very much for everyone. So I really want to start with Aurel, because Aurel was really the brain behind this organization using Brain Booster. So she did almost everything, and then I can sleep very quietly because I know that there are people that can actually take this baby for, knowing that she has this ability to organize such a nice meeting people across the world. And also, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Professor Kala. We have been working together for a long time now. Fred, thank you very much for taking time to share knowledge with our people. I have been working with her for a long time now. Katina Mike is more like it's my first mentor. She is the one who gave me my first job. She has always been there when I need her. So thank you very much, Katrina, for your presentation and your participation. I know that it's very late in Australia now. Thank you very much, Antoine. Chantal, thank you very much for sharing your own input and insight from how technology is transforming our public administration by focusing on this Ministère des Finances. And then we miss Valentin Bozo, but thank you very much, Valet, for coordinating all these things. Very, very happy to know that you are there and we can count on you. And also, Aurel, again, thank you very much. Thank you for everyone for participating to this official launch of the chapter. And then it's your baby. We are here only for 1 year. So I have decided to take over only for 1 year because we want to launch this. And then I will be very, very happy to know that people like Aurel and the rest will take over for the next year and maintain this chapter as a driving force in using IS here in Africa and in Central Africa. Thank you very much, everyone, and see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's not much I can say after Professor Wamba.